What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, two-time Canadian Ethnic Media Association award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Event, 2018 Innovation Award, and I host the only monthly online broadcast for fathers and men that is sponsored by Dove Men Care, and it's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're getting to the end of the year. We're broadcasting live on the 29th of December. But as I said on my promo for this, don't matter what day, don't matter what year, we are bringing it to the best of our abilities and for you around the world. So we're saying that 2020, we say it's been a challenging year for many people, but let's make sure we do the best to add light to each other's lives in the upcoming year. If you know anything about the Dr. Vibe Show, I always like to bring in new friends, but then I also like to bring some veterans. But this gentleman's a veteran from way back, but he hasn't been on for a minute. But let me just share a little bit about who we have sharing with us tonight. Dr. Donald Morton. He's an award-winning social entrepreneur known for his innovative social solutions. His latest solution is expressed as CEO of the ReManned Project, Incorporated, where he helps Black men break the vicious cycle of missed potential so they transform every area of their lives. He is a former executive director of the Complexities of Color Coalition. As the executive of that organization, he worked to congregate Wilmington, Delaware's African-American community in order to create a comprehensive strategy to influence institutions, policies, and laws. He has over 25 years of experience in African-American community leadership. So let us bring on, I usually say with new people for the first time, but not the last time, but first time in a while, Dr. Donald Morton. What is up, Dr. Morton?
Listen, what I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you. Just the relationship that we've shared over the course of the years, and such an honor to be a part of a conversation with you tonight.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It has been, some people where we come from say a minute, but it's been an hour since we've been together. But I'm going to pop quiz you. Do you remember the month and the year when you were first on this program?
I do not, man.
Ooh, got him. I got him.
I'm 51 now, so you gotta
come on now. Come on now.
My head, not my heart, man.
Hold on a second.
How long ago has that been, and when was that?
Age ain't nothing but a number, Dr. Morton. Well, I'm going to tell you, you were on for the first time with a lady.
Really?
Let's see if you remember. Well, let's take a guess if you know who that lady would be. In fact, you should be able to, because it's someone that both you and I know.
Really? Yeah, man, it's gonna stump me.
Okay, should I give you a hint or should I tell you straight?
Just tell me straight.
A-Dub.
Alisa, that's my girl. So, wow. She'll kill me, man.
No, that's why I'm going to not make sure she doesn't find out, but back in November 2013.
Wow.
Over 7 years ago, my brother.
Amazing, man. Absolutely amazing. Wow. And so she is one of my dearest friends. And quite honestly, we have recently reconnected as well.
Yes.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that. That makes my heart smile.
Yes, and for those, A-Dub to Dr. Morton and myself is Alisa Word. If you want someone who you need emotional intelligence with, that's it. Yeah. And I'm saying men and women, and wherever you are in your emotional intelligence, if you need to amplify it, she's the person. Enough said.
Absolutely, without question, man.
Enough said.
You reminded me of that. That's exciting.
Absolutely. And we want to shout out to another one of, I guess, your new tribe. Nicole Waldron is on with us watching live tonight. And I know you've had some conversations with her via the Clubhouse app.
Absolutely. So I want to say welcome to her. And those conversations have been simply amazing. So I'm looking forward to more of that with her.
Absolutely. Well, we read a short little bio about yourself. Let's get some background. Where did you grow up? What was early Donald like before he became the powerful Donald?
Yeah, so thank you for that, man. Listen, I'm in Wilmington, Delaware. Wilmington, Delaware is the home of the next president of the United States of
Yes,
America, Joe
yes, you're
Biden.
right.
And I often say that, Dr. Vibe, because Delaware is such a small state, yet is postured and really positioned to make significant impact across this country. And so I'm excited about that. We are well positioned on the East Coast. We can really reach New York, Washington, D.C., Jersey, Maryland. We can reach all of those places within about a 2 hour drive. And so I've been here all of my life, all 51 years. I've been here. I love it here.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Homegrown.
I'm homegrown,
Homegrown.
man. I've never lived anywhere else
Wow.
other than Delaware. I'm not so sure that I'll spend the rest of my life here,
Mm-hmm.
but Delaware has treated me really, really well. I grew up in ministry. I pastored for 25 years and recently retired from pastoring so that I could officially start the ReManned Project because 51% of my church that I pastored last were men. And that is unheard of
Yes.
in
Rare.
popular churches, right?
Rare.
In the Black church, 85 to 90% of the church, as it stands, are women. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were successful in being able to attract men. We were really intentional about being able to attract men because I see a tremendous deficit with our nation's service to brothers. And so the ReManned Project is born out of a need to see men step up and step into a leadership role with regard to themselves, their families, and our overall society. And the data is clear, Dr. Vibe. If men don't step into that space, then social ill does not decline. And so ultimately, my goal is to transform an entire culture. I just do it one man at a time.
Wonderful. Number of conversation pieces here. Where where do you remember getting this passion? Where did the passion initially start to help Black men?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I grew up in what I now know to be a really dysfunctional family. My father and my mother were in a marriage. My father was physically present for the first 9 or 10 years of my life, but emotionally absent.
Right.
And then he and my mother decided they were going to separate. They never divorced, but they did separate. And he moved all the way to Long Beach, California,
Right
um,
across.
straight across the nation, right? So you got
Wow.
to imagine a 9 year old's mind who thinks that not only did he move, but he moved as far away from me as he possibly could before he would have to go internationally, right? So he moves physically away from me. A week before my mother and father they decide to reconcile, and a week before my father is to come home, Dr. Vibe, he dies. And
Mm.
so I experienced my father's emotional absence. I experienced my father's physical absence. And then I experienced my father's eternal absence. And the impact of that on a young boy who's trying to figure out how to navigate society as a young man without the tools necessary to do that, and now without the man necessary to do that, was incredibly impactful in a negative way. And so uh, it didn't, many of those things, Dr. Vibe, didn't show up until much later in my life. The impact of his absence didn't show up until much later in my life. And so once I saw how his absence impacted me in all three phases, I began to kind of research if that was happening to me, how was that impacting other men across the country? And what I noticed is that men were being negatively impacted based on this fatherhood and manhood issue in droves and incredibly large numbers. And I felt it necessary for someone to have a voice like yourself to do the work of restoring men in our society. And I've been doing that work ever since.
Fantastic story. We need like 3 hours, but we only have a short amount of time
Yeah.
here. So I want to stay a little bit about your youth. How did you overcome?
Yeah, so another great question. That's why you're the GOAT, right? You're the greatest of all time. Um,
Humbled, humbled.
you know, for me, I didn't until much later in life, because I didn't even identify the things that had happened to me until much later in life. You got to remember, I thought that what was taking place in my life, the dysfunction of my family, an alcoholic father, he died of chronic alcoholism, watching my parents physically fight, my mom throw my dad through a glass window and then call the cops on my dad and my dad get arrested, watching my sister who is a champion because she has 2 decades clean now, but was a functioning addict for a period of time. So I grew up in dysfunction, but thought that my dysfunction was normal.
Yes.
And it wasn't until later on that I recognized that everybody didn't live like this, that there was a better way of living, and recognizing that a great responsibility in that dysfunction, and perhaps in not navigating us outside of that dysfunction, rest in my father's lap. And I didn't know whether or not it was just easier to blame him because he wasn't there, or whether dad approved the fact that when a man is absent, either by physically being absent or malfunctioning even though he's present, that there was something to be said about the importance of showing up as a man. And so as a little boy, I didn't overcome it. It wasn't until I went to therapy, Dr. Vibe, which is another thing that Black men need to embrace, right? I went to therapy, and my therapist began to ask a series of questions that made at least me think about the ways in which I was showing up in society, the divorces that I had had. Even though I was raising my children, I was doing real well at that. I was not showing up in relationships well. And so I had a deep dive in a counseling session that lasted 3 years, one long counseling
Mm,
session,
mm.
to try to figure out what was going on with Donald Morton. And it's that internal work that I did that helped me to both identify and to overcome the challenges of my 7 to 9 year old self that was still holding a lot of resentment with both my mother and my father. My father for dying, my mom for putting my dad out. All of those things showed up in very, very traumatic ways in my life and affected every relationship that I had.
Is your mother still with us?
My mother is still with us, and we have had some really, really good conversations in my adulthood because I feel a little more comfortable and courageous talking with her as an adult male than I did as a little boy. And so she is a phenomenal, phenomenal gift to me. But let's understand that there are some things that my mother simply could not give me that that my father was designed to give me. He just wasn't around emotionally, physically, and now eternally to be able to give me those things. I do want to acknowledge, though, Dr. Vibe, that my father, I don't know whether he had a premonition that he was going to die or what, but he wrote a letter to me that my grandmother gave to me after he had passed. And
Mm.
the letter said, "Please tell my son I loved him. I just didn't know how to father him." And it wasn't until later on that I found out, Dr. Vibe, that my dad never met his father.
There
And
you
it's not
go.
that my grandmother didn't know who his father was, she refused to tell him. And I got an opportunity to meet my grandfather, my father's father, before he died, but my dad never got an opportunity to meet him, and left this world without a sense of identity. And it's another part of the reason why I do the work that I do.
You know, it just brings up the phrase that I use more and more now, that every father has a father. The question is, where is that father?
Absolutely right. And there is I'm sure you would agree, I've heard you say this before, there is a dad-sized hole inside of every young man's soul that cannot be replaced by surrogates. And while I celebrate all of the mentoring organizations, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, other mentoring organizations, there is still a cry for the natural and biological father that cannot be quenched until that natural and biological father is embraced. And so, again, that's the reason why I do the work I do.
What legacy is your mother living with you right now? What do you carry on with what she has done for you over your 51 years?
Yeah, good question, man. My mother is a jewel, and I think one of the things that both she and I recognize now is the value of understanding her own limitations. She often says, son, if I could do it all over again, I would do it differently. If I could do it all over again, I would have stayed with your dad. I would have tried to work it out. I would have helped him a little more understand what it meant to be a father, been a little more patient. And so my mom is a natural nurturer. She is one who walks in a tremendous amount of love. And if there is something that my mom leaves with me, it is this unconditional, radical, relentless love.
Can you give me an example during your journey with her of that?
Yeah. So early on, woo, man, I almost cried, Dr. Vibe.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right, man. Because it's the cries of love.
2014, I had cancer, and I had prostate cancer, and I actually recovered in my mother's living room in a hospital bed that she had brought to her home simply so that I could recover. And it was, it was a long period of time that it took, that she put her life on hold just to make sure that she nursed me back to health. She cooked every day. She helped me. And this may be a little extra for people to hear, but she helped me to drain urine bags. She took care of stitches. She prayed with me and was there for me and missed service for me, just to make sure that her son was taken care of to handle the recovery period. And I recently, Dr. Vibe, I talked with my mom and I said to her, I said, Precious, thank you.
Precious. I love how you say that.
I call her Precious, man.
I love that. I love that.
So Precious, thank you for, spending that time helping me to recover from cancer. And she says, son, that's what mothers do. I said, no, not every mother does
Not every mother does that.
Not every mother does that. And I don't want to diminish the fact that I would not have made it through that very difficult time, Dr. Vibe, without my mom. I'm alive today because of Obamacare, because they found the cancer. They found the cancer the immediate visit after I got health insurance. They found the cancer right after I got health insurance. My first doctor's visit, they found the cancer. And then my mom nursed me back to health. So I owe those two for, obviously God, I owe them for my life today.
Wow. Well, we could spend forever on your mother, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit and start going down the manhood journey. Nicole is saying, please let your mom know that her love is uplifting. I'm sure he does every day.
Absolutely.
Every day.
Nicole, absolutely.
Who was the first man? I don't know if this is two words can be in the same phrase, so I'll ask them together and maybe ask them separately.
Okay.
Who was the first man in your journey that you could love and trust, or was it separate? A man you met first you could trust, and the man you could first love or care about?
Yeah. So I have to the not even the first man, the only man
Okay.
that I have that has had that level of impact, Dr. Vibe, with me is Dr. Michael Aaron Freeman. He is my spiritual father. He is a mentor to me and has literally, obviously, because I lost my dad so early, he has been a father to me, and has been incredibly loving to me, but also very, very challenging to me. He doesn't put up with foolishness, and we'll talk about that later. I've been caught up in some things that I'm not proud of, and when I was, he loved me back to health, but he also challenged me to face the things that I had done. And he said it like this: "Face it like a man." And it's those words that transformed my life. Um, so he was the first and only man that I had that depth of relationship with, still
Mm.
have today. Even after I had a falling out with him, he never had a falling out with me. I left him and he would still contact me, say, "Hey man, you good? We good yet?" And I'm like, "No, we're not good." But his love for me was relentless. He just never gave up. And I appreciate that, because sometimes you need a love to save you from yourself. And he did that. I do have to also acknowledge Dr. Alvin Turner, who is my therapist even today. He's retired, but I still have access to him, because there was a time, Dr. Vibe, where I was in such a low and dark place that I had my gun on the very desk that I'm sitting before today, and I was ready to end it all. And I had enough wherewithal to contact him and tell him what I was about to do. And he talked me off the ledge and said, "Anytime you're feeling that way, please, here's my personal number. I don't care what time it is, contact me." So those two men have been the apex of love in my life and are responsible for me being the restored man that I am today.
Where would your life be without both of them?
I wouldn't be here. There is no life without either of them. Dr. Turner literally saves my life from me taking my own life, and Dr. Mike Freeman is responsible for me having life and life more abundantly, right? So the ability to recover, to be restored, to face the challenges, my indiscretions, the lack of integrity that I once had, and to now show up whole and healed is the full work of Dr. Michael Aaron Freeman. And so I wouldn't, not only would I not be here physically and alive, I wouldn't have the opportunity to show up and do the work that I'm doing without both of those men.
Of the hundreds, if not thousands, of Black men that you've had communication with, what percentage of them do you think have two men like that in their lives?
Maybe on the high end, 5%. We don't have in large numbers Black men in any spaces, right? So when we talk about therapy, I was in a room talking about this last night. There are not a lot of Black male therapists. Talk
True.
about educators. There are not a lot of Black male educators,
Yep.
right? We find ourselves in overwhelming numbers in sports and athletics, which is good. We find ourselves in artists in industry. That's good. But we're not in homes as much as we should be. And so our children are being impacted. And so we're not seeing ourselves in the places that genuinely matter. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to do a better job at that.
I know before we went live, you wanted to talk about Black men in leadership. And I think that's a beautiful segue, what you just said. And I want to take a look at it from a past perspective, a present perspective, and a future perspective.
Yes.
So let's look at the past. Black men and leadership in the past. Was there any? And if there was, what form of that leadership did it show?
Yeah, yeah. There was. Even if we were to go back to when we were brought to the shores of this country, right? One of the first responsibilities to keep us enslaved is to separate us from our role as leaders of family. So Black men are removed, and then we codify that later on through vicious policies that only make available help from the federal government to moms if dad is not around, right? So we go to the 60s where there was Dr. Martin King, right? Where there was Ralph Abernathy, where there was Malcolm X, strong Black men who were committed to family, both flawed, but committed to family and committed to community and to the advancement of our people and our culture. So there has always been a representation of Black men in leadership positions. And I think we have to recover that. So historically, we've done, I think, a good job at showing up in leadership positions. I think it began to erode for reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, let's get to those reasons. Why do you think that started to erode in the journey?
Yeah, so I am not a fan of the feminist movement in its current form. I think that there should have always been equality with sisters. I'm not one of those guys who thinks a woman should walk 3 paces behind me. I'm a guy who believes that there is equality in being. There may be a little difference in function, right? And so I think the feminist movement had some good elements to it in that it fought for equality in spaces where it was where there were spaces that were male dominated. But we have the propensity as a society to be extremists, right? We swing the pendulum from one side to the next, and we do so in extremes without finding a way to hold center. And so now what we have is a society who believes that there is no value whether or not a man shows up in family and society or not. Society thinks it has found a way to survive without a uniquely masculine and male contribution. And what we are finding out is that has not worked and it will never work. There is a unique contribution that you and I bring to the table and other men like us bring to the table that cannot be duplicated by anyone else. It is uniquely ours. And so I think that movements like the feminist movement, that has been that our Black women, our Black sisters have kind of adopted in forms that are toxic, I think, to our community. So when you hear men talk about the fact that we need to step back into roles that are uniquely created for us, I know that there are people who don't necessarily believe in that, and that's cool. But I think that there is a value that men bring to the table, and men no longer feel valued. Our society doesn't necessarily express value towards men. And so I think what we're finding now is the pathology that happens when the absence of men take place, and the pathogeny that simply means sick men produce sick societies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can't fix what's happening with men, then we'll continue to see a society that is sick as a result of a bunch of sick brothers.
You know, as you were sharing there, a statement came to my head, and I'd love to get your thought on it. And from a Black American male lens, do you think American history has ever given the opportunity for the Black family with a Black male head to thrive.
No, that's such a good point, and one that I've not necessarily thought about, Dr. Vibe. I don't think that, again, to go back to 1619 Jamestown, right? There has always been an assault on the Black family, and the way that we assault the Black family is that you attack it from the head. And now there's even this idea and fight against what we have redefined as patriarchy, right? So everybody talks about down with patriarchy. Patriarchy simply means, in its simplest form, a male-led household. So when we develop these tools against a male-led household in an effort to kind of create this family that should not have roles or anything like that, I think we're falling into the very structure that was designed to disrupt and destroy the Black family from the very, very beginning. So no, there hasn't been a welcomed participatory nature of our society around codifying and protecting the Black family. And that's why I think we have to do it. We can't expect anyone else to do it. We have to do it. And we have to stop thinking that everything good is the result of, a white construct. I don't buy that. A man being at home with his wife and children is not a white construct. It's a right construct, right? And so we've got to get back to doing what is right and in the best interest of our families, and ultimately that impacts society at large.
Okay. So we've looked at it at a historical perspective, and I know that you're you're mentoring, helping men move forward. What are you seeing on the landscape today when it comes to Black men in leadership? And just a little disclaimer, Dr. Morton just came off an hour session with Black men. So I'm glad he can talk about this because he heard it and he can share some of that perspective during that conversation to what we're talking about today.
Here's the brilliance of your segue, Dr. Vibe. One guy who showed up tonight said to all of the brothers, I have never been challenged to understand, to know my purpose at all. He said, I just exist. I exist from day to day, and whatever comes that day, without any sense of direction or planning. I just exist. And I don't think that he's an anomaly. I think that he kind of represents where many men are. And that is without any sense of direction, sense of plan, any goals. I talk often about the fact that our sisters are seeing tremendous growth. They invest in themselves. Our sisters are growing, particularly as it relates to education, in ways that are beyond any demographic. Our sisters are killing the game as it relates to that, right? And our brothers are targeted in such a way that they are not showing up in the same way. So a part of what we did tonight is just to get them to think about what their noble goals are, right? What is their purpose? And then back up and develop a plan of action that is consistent with the reasons for which they're here on the planet. And there is such a breakdown in that, that even if they were to set goals and set a plan, it is often incongruent with who they are and what they're called to do and to be. And so that's not sustainable. So many men are not showing up because nobody's trained them. Nobody's brought out of them those necessary elements to help them to show up as men of families and men of society. And so I want to interrupt that pattern, to break those cycles so that men begin to show up far more powerfully.
Well, a few things. I wish I would have been in that room. Unfortunately, I had something to do, but I would have asked 2 questions to the men there.
Yeah.
The first question I would have asked them is, what would you do if you couldn't fail?
Yeah, yeah. What would you do if you couldn't fail? And in fact, again, brilliant quote. Because in fact, when asked, he was on the hot seat where we kind of talked about his plan, and shot holes in his plan to help him to understand the obstacles that are going to come with his plan, how to navigate those things. And one of the guys asked him almost a similar question, like, why wouldn't you do this now? And he says, I've not thought about doing it now because I'm afraid. I'm afraid, and I've been afraid. So he said it took all the courage that I could muster even to get to the call tonight. So we got guys who are experiencing tremendous fears, different kinds of fears, but fears nonetheless. Dr. Joy DeGruy, in her book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, talks about the fact that men are bankrupt internally, right? It's not that we have low self-esteem. She argues we have no self-esteem, that we're bankrupt. And a part of the things that we have to do is to recover a man's sense of self-concept so that he shows up differently and is ready to do the work. But that part of it, Dr. Vibe, has been the most difficult part of getting men just to have a sense of identity before they can go through the rest of the process that the ReManned Project offers.
What are some of the things that are from your lens, are robbing Black men right now?
I think the major thing that's robbing Black men is a lack of self-concept. They don't know who they are, and they don't know how powerful they are, right? It's not until they overcome certain things. Some of them are simply powerful because they're surviving in urban spaces, watching friends of theirs every single day be killed, watching families go hungry, right? And they're surviving every single day. They're doing what they got to do, with at least what they feel like they've got to do. And they've overcome, or at least been able to manage, the trauma that comes with being in an urban space every single day. If I can simply get them to embrace the fact that they are bigger and more powerful than the ways that in which they've been showing up, then they'll step into the rest of the process. The ReManned Project has a 6-stage process, and the longest part of that process is always the spirituality and inner strength part that deals with purpose, self-concept, forgiveness, all of those things that are necessary for a man to be able to engage the rest of the process. If he doesn't deal with those things up front, then he won't survive the rest of the process, and he won't survive in life very, very long. So I think it's the self-concept issue that we need to address more frankly and forthrightly.
I would have also had two other things to say to that man. First of all, what's the one thing you want to achieve? Not the millions. What's the one thing? And also, when he told me that, I would say, if you don't do it, how are you going to feel?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think those are great questions. You'll probably.
I got to make sure I get on to the next call. Maybe I got to apply for the ReManned Project.
Yeah. And I'll probably have you come on as a guest
anytime, anytime, because, and I'm going to tell the brothers up front, I'm not here for you to like me. I'm here to help you. And sometimes help ain't fun.
Yeah,
but you're going to value it in the end.
And that's one of the things that we teach them up front, even when they're applying to be a part of the ReManned Project. We're not here to make you feel warm and fuzzy. We're here so that you get results in your life. And while recognizing the trauma that many of them are in, right? So we recognize that. And since we know that that exists, we develop a pathway for them to be successful, even though that stuff exists.
You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't get a chance for you to share about the story behind the ReManned Project and how it came into existence.
Yeah, Dr. Vibe, I talk about this openly. I talked with you a moment ago about the fact that my dad told me to face something like a man. I was married before. I am married now, but I was married before, and I lost that marriage to infidelity. I was out of control and so immature that I looked for ways to blame her for the issues that I was experiencing. And it was the issues that I was experiencing. I forever regret the ways in which I treated her and the infidelity with I was unfaithful with a single woman, and I was unfaithful with a married woman. I was just out there wilding. And I did all of this, Dr. Vibe, as a preacher. I did all of this as a pastor, right? And so all of this came tumbling down. And what I recognized is that men lack a couple of things. One is we lack the sense to take responsibility for the things that we do. It was easier for me to blame it on her and to tell her that she was wrong, instead of just owning the responsibility for the stuff I had done. And so it was that, and it was an unwillingness to be mature about how I was loving or not loving her, and the ways in which I was showing up in these other situations that I was in. So I had to take ownership of that, and because I recognized that I was dealing with that, I could bet that there were a number of men dealing with the exact same thing. There are three ways in which a man misses potential, Dr. Vibe. One is he hits these performance ceilings that are much lower than how he should be or what he should be accomplishing. Secondly, he hits performance walls, right, that distract him and divert him from reaching his fullest potential. Usually that happens because something happens that diverts him from his goals and from his full potential. And there are guys who do reach a level of success, but are on faulty performance foundations. And so they ultimately crumble, right? And they're not able to sustain the stuff that the successes that they've reached. So Dr. Vibe, I got to tell you, I reached all of them. I had times where I hit performance ceilings. I had times where I hit performance walls, and I had major success and then had it all crumble because my foundation was bad. Dr. Henry Cloud says that character is the capacity to meet, face, and overcome adverse realities. Character is not just telling the truth. That's a part of it. Character is the ability to meet, face, and overcome adverse realities. So when I could develop the capacity to manage the different adversities that was happening in my life, then I had character. And character is the essential component to manhood. You are not a man if you do not have character. That is as simple as I can put it. So what we teach men inside the ReManned Project is how to develop a sense of character so that they can begin to show up more powerfully in society.
Nice. Fantastic. I'm going to throw out some phrases to you, and I want to hear how you respond.
Okay.
One of my mentors, and I mentioned this, I think, in a room that you and I were in the other night, Glenn Barker, former head of ReManned Project in Chicago. Boys make excuses, men take responsibility.
Ooh, yes, sir. I'm still smiling off of that quote. I'm still smiling off of that quote. And it is what we teach, but I've never heard it phrased that way. But I can promise you that there will be a slide that we show men with that exact phrase on it.
Well, you know what? If I can coax them, if you want, I could have Glenn in for a session. But your men, they have to be ready, because Glenn is that. Oh, he does not play. Like I mean,
I love it. That's what we want inside the ReManned Project. Absolutely,
he does not play. Another person I had on my platform recently, a lovely lady, Dr. Cassandra Bollar, in the middle of her great thought process, sharing about Black men, she said, "Many Black men are devalued."
Absolutely, without question, and that's that unfortunately now is a societal issue. It used to be that Black men were devalued by white men, right? then it became that influence entered the home, and Black men are now devalued in their own homes. But now the danger is Black men are devalued by society at large. We're not thought of as a meaningful contributor to society. And what I love about the Dr. Vibe show and the work that you do is helping all of us as a society reimagine what manhood, what a Black man looks like, because there are some dope Black men out here
Absolutely.
that don't get to play, right? And so, yeah, we're devaluing Black men in larger and larger swaths of society.
Another phrase: many Black men are screaming and nothing's coming out.
Yeah, we cry in silence. And here's the deal. While nothing comes out as a sound, we express ourselves in anger and in physical violence. There's an African proverb that says, when a child is not embraced by the village, he'll burn it down to feel its warmth. He just needs attention. And the village happens in a microcosm in the Black family. And then the village happens in a macrocosm in society at large. Both the micro and the macro are being burned down to feel its warmth, right? Because both of those institutions and environments are failing young Black men.
How much of an impact, and one of the things I've really become passionate over the last few years is a lack of intergenerational conversation between Black men. Am I wrong thinking that?
No, you're not wrong thinking. You're not wrong thinking that, and I think that really has to begin to be at the forefront of the conversation. The challenge with it is that we're again caught in this cycle, right? Where and everyone wants to think. I have a different thought process, but everybody wants to think that the way out of this cycle is to continue to start over with young boys. I don't know that I don't think we have time to do that. I think we've done that for decades now. We lose a generation, then we say, let's start over with another generation. We lose that generation. We start over with another generation. The truth is the sweet spot, Dr. Vibe, of change is going to be a man between the ages of 25 and 30 years old.
Yep.
Because at 25 and 30 years old, his prefrontal cortex is fully developed. He begins to make different choices about how he views his life and what he should be doing with his life, which then if we can grab him at that moment, teach him a sense of responsibility and character, he'll go back and he'll start to raise his son, and he'll go to his father and develop that relationship, right, between him and his dad that perhaps has been absent. The fulcrum of change is a Black man between 25 and 30 years old, because he's young enough to still impact. He's old enough to still impact his child. He's young enough to get his dad back involved, to forgive his dad for not being there. He is the answer. So for me, everybody talks to me and says, Donald, you starting too late with men at 25 years old. I said, no, I'm starting right on time, right? Because he is the X factor in being able to reach both generations and bring them to the table so that we interrupt this cycle that we're in.
I agree with that, because that's one of the key. I think there's two key points in a man's life. That what you said right there. He's not a boy anymore.
That's right.
But he's not a man yet.
That's right. And manhood is not. Both you and I know that manhood is not age, right? It is scientifically proven, though, that there's a certain point at 25 years old that something happens up here. It clicks, where a young man begins to say, you know what? This stuff I'm doing is corny. It's for the birds, right? Yep. I want to do something different with my life. I want to raise my son differently, my daughter differently. He begins to think differently. And so what we do inside the ReManned Project is give him the tools necessary for him to navigate his own life, his own journey. And that happens in 6 distinct stages, right? That is spirituality, inner strength, it's responsibility and self-stewardship, it's ethics and values, maturity and growth, authenticity and transparency, nobility and excellence. Those are the stages that we take a man through every 6 months so that he understands if he masters those different stages, he can now be called a man. When he enters the ReManned Project, he is stripped of the title of a man. We call him a male. We don't call him a man until he earns the title of manhood. And I think we've got to get back to those rites of passage, right? That give us a sense of honor to carry the title man or Mr.
Absolutely. I love the rites of passage aspect. I think that's very, very important. We have lost that.
Yes, absolutely.
We have of earning it.
Right.
Not just, earning it, working, doing the work.
And you know what, where we got that, where at least I got it from. I've been in the United States military. I went into the Marine Corps first, Dr. Vibe, and they kicked me out because I couldn't pass swim qual. So I came out, and a month later, I came out, man, a month later, went to the United States Army. And when I went to the Army, there was a guy by the name of Vincent Matthews. Vincent Matthews was a Q. He was an Omega guy. There was a guy in the platoon that called himself Q, and he would walk around throwing up hooks, barking like a Q. And Vincent got drunk one night and asked the guy called himself Q some questions that Q couldn't answer. And Vincent Matthews beat that man like I ain't never seen a man get beat. We pulled Vince off, and we're like, "Yo, Matthews, what's wrong with you?" He said, "Hey, Morton, do you know the hell I had to go through to be a Q? So here's a guy who's doing all the symbols, but he don't have a substance. He didn't go through the stuff I went through. So he said he doesn't have a right to call him something that he hasn't earned. To your point, he hasn't earned it. It's the same thing for me with manhood. I went through hell, failures and challenges, and having to face adversity and having to face my own stuff that I had done wrong. I had to face moral failures and being knocked off of a high horse. I had to face all of that to be called a man. And here are guys who haven't gone through anything. They're still laying on their mom's couch, still being taken care of by their girlfriends, and they want to be called a man. Nah, I'm a man. Not for me. You got to earn that title, right? And so for us inside the ReManned Project, one of the brothers said this, Dr. Vibe. He said, Dr. Morton, you can have DR. Just let me be called MR. If I can earn Mr., then I'm fully satisfied. You can have all the degrees. As long as people respect me as a man, then I'm good. That's the kind of work that I'm proud that we're doing inside the ReManned Project. And 83% of the men that come through the ReManned Project that complete the process, 83% of them are doing as well, if not better, a year later. So those are enormously powerful numbers that we're seeing of success inside the ReManned Project.
Great success. Fantastic. Where are Black men, if they are getting any leadership today, where are they getting it from? And is it from the right places?
No, man, you know the answer to that. You got to ask that question, but you know the answer to that. They're getting that information from barbershops. They're getting it from dads who have.
Now, hold on now. Okay, now there's a very interesting point, because you and I see enough coverage, especially in the media, about the importance of barbershop to Black men.
Yes, it's the Black man's country club, right?
Yes.
So we've heard that for years.
Yes.
And it is a sense of community. It's a sense of connection. It's a sense of culture, but it's also a source of misinformation, because most of the guys that, same thing for the beauty salon, right? Everybody's got a lot to say as it relates to giving advice, but the advice is horrible advice. It's horrible advice. And so when you and I show up and we start telling them things that they should do, like my man, be patient with your wife. And I've had my own struggles, with patience. So when I tell a guy, be patient with your wife, he's like, man, I'll just find somebody else. I ain't got to put up with that. I'm like, my man, no, you do. You really do. It's not you just, going on to the next woman.
No, it's not like the recycling bin.
Right.
Right?
Right. And so those are the kinds of discussions that are happening inside the barbershop, and nobody's entering that space and challenging and checking Black men to show up differently. And so that's a part, again, of the work that I do. I interrupt those patterns. I'm a disruptor. I come to disrupt thought processes that have not served us well, even when we think we are winning. We're not winning. We're not winning, right? So when 80% of the people in urban spaces are led by families are led by single moms, we're not winning. No. And somebody's got to tell us that, so that we don't have this false sense of reality that we're doing better than we actually are.
This has been a very unique year.
Yeah.
How has it, from your lens, impacted Black men?
If we were smart, Dr. Vibe, during this time, man, we get an opportunity. We should have had an opportunity to self-reflect. We should have took this time that all of us have prayed for, right? Lord, give me more time. I just need some time to myself. Then he gave us this huge universal timeout, and we didn't know what to do with it. I think Black men took this time, and some of them are worse off because they didn't do the work during this time. But I've also seen some guys that took the time to do some self-reflection and ask themselves some questions that they were either afraid to ask themselves prior to, or didn't know to ask themselves prior to. There's something that happens about identity. I don't want to make this a preaching session, Dr. Vibe, but there's a scripture where the Bible says, and Jacob was left alone. It's one of the most powerful scriptures there is. Jacob was left alone, and when he was left alone, he wrestled with an angel about his own identity. It says, who are you? He said, I'm Jacob. He said, you'll no longer be called Jacob. He wrestled with him about identity. I think what Black men were able to accomplish, some were at least able to wrestle about their own identity. Who am I? What am I really about? And some of them that did the work turned out better. Some of them that refused to do the work are going into a 2021 without having done that work. And I got news for everybody. 2021 doesn't become better because January 1 hits. You will have the same year that you just had if you don't have a new you. A new you produces a new year. If you don't have a new you, you're going to have the same year you just had in 2020. Because this virus, this COVID thing doesn't change overnight. We still got dark days ahead. And depending on whether or not a man has prepared himself for it, taken advantage of the time to prepare himself for it, will be, kind of show up in 2021 and kind of give reference to that.
Well, I'm going to wind down because I know you've had a bit of a long day. And I'm also going to make sure it isn't 7 years till you come back again.
Yeah. I love talking to you, man. I could talk to you for hours at a time.
So don't worry. I'm going to be calling you out on this platform many times. And again, I'll make myself available anytime for the ReManned Project. Had an incredible conversation last week with a gentleman, D. Chansonberry, a prolific independent producer. He's produced Dark Girls 1, Dark Girls 2. And had a deep session. And one of the things he said, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, he's saying, especially for Black men, he said, man, what would many Black men's lives be if they could just stop surviving and just start living?
Yeah. Believe it or not, Dr. Vibe, I've asked myself that same question. One of the dangers of trauma is that you become satisfied with surviving. That becomes your new normal. You don't see a life beyond survival. So we were never called to survive. We were called to thrive, to have life in abundance to the full till it overflows. And what we would see is a far more fulfilled man, family, and society at large. We teach men an internal locus of control, that their trajectory of life is owned by them. It's not owned by any external factor. It's owned by them. And so if we would take ownership of our lives, stop, celebrate the fact that we've survived, yes. But now since we've survived, we ought to go ahead and live. I love that point. We ought to go ahead and live and enjoy the rest of our lives. Because if we don't take that posture, there's a magnetic nature to survival that'll continue to pull you towards it, and you'll never ever realize that there was so much more that this world had to offer if you simply got beyond the whole survival stage.
Multi-layer, it's one question, but for different communities. So I would like to have you share your message about Black men, first of all, to non-melanated people.
Yeah, so we're to non-melanated people. We are. I would ask that non-melanated people bracket when coming into spaces of melanated people. What that simply means is, can you suspend? Bracketing is a sociological term. Can you suspend your preconceived ideas about a Black man and give him an opportunity to show up in a way that you can make an accurate judgment call with? I work with men that are former gangbangers. I work with some that are current gangbangers. And you know what I found out, Dr. Vibe? I found out that these guys are men, and many of them are gentle men, loving men who are just in an environment that we have to tackle. So I would ask non-melanated people to bracket and to suspend preconceived ideas and give a man an individual chance to show up as himself, and then you make a judgment call about a relationship with him.
Okay, next three will be about for Black people. First of all, Black people in general. What is your message about Black men?
So the message to Black people in general is a return to the norms of a healthy culture, right? That men are a significant part of our restoration, if there is to be any, of our communities and our families. You cannot do it without Black men. Black men, the data says that every social ill can be found in the absence of a Black man. Suicide rises, dropout rates rise, mass incarceration rises whenever a Black man is not in the household. So while there has been an attempt to do it without us, to do it in ways that ignore us, what the data continues to prove is we are an indispensable part of our social health and our societal fabric that can no longer be ignored. If you want to heal our society, you got to start with Black men.
Second last group, Black women. What's the message?
The message to Black women is twofold. One is thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for holding it down while we were trying to figure it out. Thank you for not giving up on us. And thank you for providing us safe spaces to come out of the trauma that we've been in. Don't give up on us. We're in larger and larger numbers, beginning to identify how to show up more powerfully, to be protectors and providers of our families. And so thank you for holding it down. It won't be long now.
Okay. And finally, Black men.
Brothers, we have a responsibility to show up differently. It's no longer the system. We can't continue to place all of our ills and woes on a system that we already know is not designed for our success. The question isn't whether or not there is a system that is designed against us. The question is, since we know that's the case, how will you decide to navigate that and still be successful in the face of that adversity. Because that's what true and genuine character is, my man. It's the ability to meet, face, and overcome adverse realities on your journey to success. Impediments are a part of the journey. Your ability to navigate them will suggest a winning formula for you to be the kind of man that you need to be, your family needs you to be, and ultimately our society needs you to be.
Check mark. We done. Dr. Morton,
Man,
again, an honest pleasure. If people want to touch base with you, how can they do that?
they can hit me at Real Don Morton. That's all of my social media platforms are at Real Don Morton, including Clubhouse.
Yeah, this man is dominating Clubhouse. He ain't giving me a chance to breathe, to do anything on Clubhouse.
You're dominating Clubhouse.
No. I'm working on something, but not. I'm just watching and listening, and I'm gonna make my landing soon on Clubhouse. But this is the real home of the Dr. Vibe Show. Clubhouse is one thing, but this is my home, and Clubhouse will be part of the auxiliary.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, man, for having me on, and for
always a pleasure. You always have a home here whenever you want to come on. And as I said, I'm always available to come on and share with the ReManned Project. And I even have some guests, like I said, the Glenn Barkers and the Dr. Cassandra Bollards, who are fantastic,
outstanding
people that would be more than happy to share and amplify the Black men around the world.
Perfect. I'll make sure I take you up on that.
Absolutely. It's Dr. Vibe here. I'm the host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, two-time Canadian Ethnic Media Association award winner. 2020, I won for the Best Podcasting News Award, 2018 Innovation Award. I also, once a month, host the only online broadcast in the world for fathers and dads that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It is also co-sponsored by Dad Central Canada's National Fatherhood Organization. I'd like to thank everyone who watched live and on the replay. I'd like to thank BIA Media for the excellent production. And I'll close out with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. And remember to give yourself grace. Also, love, faith, and respect. We're broadcasting live on the 29th. If we don't see you, we wish you the best and favor in 2021. And just work on being a little bit better each day, and just focus on one thing you want to get accomplished during the year. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good. Good night, everybody.